The Business Council's Strong Australia Network has kicked off its first event for 2020 in Busselton, a region in the southwest of Western Australia, best known, of course, for its beautiful beaches and award-winning wine. Business editor Ticky Fullerton sat down with the BCA Chief Executive Jennifer Westacott and a few key business people around the area to discuss the issues facing this region.
Hello and welcome to the Business Council of Australia's Strong Australia event here in the remarkable town of Busselton, about 2.5 hours drive south of Perth. And joining me on our panel is Stephen Green, President of ATCO Gas Australia, Jennifer Westacott, Chief Executive of the BCA, Rob Scott, Chief Executive of Wesfarmers, and the Mayor of Busselton, Grant Henley. Welcome, panel.
Thank you.
Jennifer, you're back here in Busselton after a couple of years. What made you select Busselton as one of the Strong Australia towns, and how are you going?
Well, as you know, Strong Australia is about how do we unleash the potential of regional Australia to make the country stronger, and what are the sorts of things that regions need, be it infrastructure, be it skills, be it investment, that's going to drive their economies harder. So we're back for the second time. What's good to see is that the airport has made progress, an airport that is going to be a game changer, I think, in terms of now we're going to see direct flights from Melbourne, commercial flights.
That is a game changer.
I think it's a big game changer. I think it's a game changer. But what you still see here is this region of unbelievable potential. You know, this tremendous agribusiness that runs right across the southwest that could be exported to Australia, tremendous tourism opportunities, great infrastructure such as, you know, great skills system, proximity to a major capital city, all of the ingredients that we think that's, if you kind of push that a bit harder, that would really unleash a lot of economic potential, a lot of good living standards, but also collectively with other places around the country start to grow the economy harder.
Grant, as Mayor, tell us a little bit about the town, the employment, the big companies here.
Yes, so Busselton is almost 40,000 people. It's the second oldest settlement in Western Australia, and home to the longest jetty in the Southern Hemisphere, the beautiful Busselton Jetty. With
an interesting tourism attraction at the end of it.
An underwater observatory where you can, one of only 6 in the world, a natural aquarium where you can go down and visit the underwater environment without getting your feet wet.
Yeah, so you're in the fishbowl, really?
Absolutely. You're inside and the fish are looking in at you. So that's an incredible attraction. Our biggest industries here, we're very famous as part of the Margaret River wine appellation, and the majority of those wines are inside the city of Busselton, I'm proud to say. We're home to top tourism town of Yelling Up on our west coast with the surf beaches, around to the beautiful sheltered Geograph Bay and Busselton Jetty. We have a long history of agriculture, a newer history of viticulture, and also tourism.
And the biggest employer here seems to be construction. What does that say about the town?
Yeah, we've been booming ahead in growth at over 3% for a decade, and a lot of that is off the back of being a base for the resource industry and having a strong FIFO relationship with Rio Tinto. And
so that's the fly in, fly out.
Fly in, fly out. People can live in this beautiful corner of Australia and add their bit to the resource industry in the northwest.
Yeah. Now, Rob, you running Wesfarmers, actually you are a Busselton boy, aren't you?
Well, my family is, certainly
yes.
A long history here.
Right, okay. I think your father did quite well here.
He was a good swimmer anyway, up and down the jetty, I think.
Yeah, I think he won once, didn't he?
That's right.
But you've actually, first of all, there's a Bunnings store here. You've actually put in recently a Kmart store as well.
That's right. So Wesfarmers has operations through many regional areas, so the regions are incredibly important for us, and I guess we add value and see opportunity in many ways. So bringing the Kmart store to Busselton is providing the community with access to phenomenal price products, a broader array of products that means that they can get what they need in town, and also creates over 100 jobs as well in the process.
Stephen, just bringing you in here, you're the gas guy. You distribute for Perth, but Busselton, Bunbury and soon Dunsborough. So this is a moving thing, infrastructure-wise.
That's right. So ATCO Gas supplies some 760,000 customers in Western Australia, And in Busselton and Bunbury region, we have nearly 40,000 customers. And this is a region that we've seen is growing, not only in the residential sector with the population growth, but also in the commercial and industrial sectors. And we're proud to be able to supply a reliable and affordable energy source which allows new businesses to establish and grow in this region.
So this all sounds terrific news on the upside. Come back to you as Mayor, Grant. There was perhaps a bit more expectation around what might have happened at the airport.
Oh, look, we've been developing the airport now for over 5 years, and we've extended it to accommodate in the future with state and federal funding, be able to accommodate wide-bodied aircraft. And of course the potential of wide-bodied aircraft is their belly and the potential to stick freight in there and take it to destinations on not only the eastern seaboard but eventually into Asia and from there on to the world.
Yeah, but didn't you have a promise from the state government?
Yeah, we had an undertaking to build a new terminal that was required to take the airport forward. We've now been required to make sure that the flights are working, and we've done our bit with that, with securing flights through Jetstar directly into Melbourne, and we're very excited to see those commence in 5 weeks' time.
Yeah. Jennifer, you're very involved with the Aerotropolis in Western Sydney. Tell me a bit about the potential for what an airport can do and actually what the infrastructure should be around the airport.
Well, of course, the Western Sydney Airport, the Nancy Bird Walton Airport, is a very big airport, and it will be Australia's biggest airport when it's really got to full capacity. But I think the lessons from around the world when airports get built is you've got to have the supporting infrastructure. You've got to have the freight capacity on the site. You've got to have a capacity for people to bring their product, get it processed, get it onto a plane, get it into those very lucrative markets in Asia very quickly. You've got to have the right transport connections, and you've got to have some of the jobs and skills to service an airport. But it's what I think is all over the world is airports, big infrastructure like that, are catalysts for change. And in this case, in the case of Busselton, catalysts for the agribusiness industry.
Well, you pointed to Wagner's actually up there in Toowoomba.
In Toowoomba. I mean, that's a private airport, but I think there was a bit of scepticism about whether this would work. But you know, years on, you know, they've got direct flights from Asia. They've got Qantas's airbase, training base there, which is going to build a lot of economic capacity in Toowoomba. So I do think it's one of those cases where you've got to kind of back some stuff in, and then you see the kind of flow-on effects to the rest of the community.
So, Stephen, you, I think, spent 15 years in Melbourne. You've gone back and visited the airport here now today. What do you think needs to happen at the airport?
Well, when I lived in Melbourne, I never dreamed that you'd be able to take a direct flight from Melbourne to Busselton to Margaret River, and I think that is just tremendous, and I'm sure it'll be a big success, but the degree to which it'll be a success will depend on the experience that people have when they get here. Yeah.
So what needs to be done, I mean, in your view?
I think in my view that when people land and pick up their bags, that they need to be guided as to where they're going to go. It's quite a big region here between Busselton and Margaret River.
But the airport's very close to Busselton, isn't it?
It is, and Busselton has grown and developed immensely in recent years. And I think educating people of what is here, the jetty, the foreshore development, the fabulous wines and foods that are available here.
Well, just as an East Coaster myself, you sort of think how one does think about Margaret River and all that there is to offer here, but as a Sydney side or even Melbourne, you sort of think, well, can't really do it in a long weekend, can we? Because you fly into Perth and you've got another 2.5 hour drive. This is, we're saying, is a game changer, but perhaps, Grant, once again, what can Busselton specifically offer?
I think it's the aggregation of experiences, and that there is something for everyone, from a really top-notch restaurant in a world-class winery down to eating fish and chips on the foreshore and on a safe swimming beach. And you've got safe
swimming, because we think of obviously the great surf beaches, but it's just like beautifully flat family holiday type stuff.
And that's it with the attractors to everyone. Dunsborough is a very famous family location in Western Australia with a north-facing beach that's sheltered the majority of the year and very popular with tourists. And within a couple of minutes' drive, you're in a world-class winery, you're in caves, you're in adventure tourism, and just over the hill there's world-class surfing. So you've kind of got all that in a reasonably short travel distance.
Yeah. Jennifer, another one of the challenges that we've been talking about today, given that there is such a lot of building going on, is the insurance side of things. Now, this has come to focus because of the fires we've had in other parts of Australia, but it's very high on people's minds when you're building new homes now.
Yeah, look, this is going to have to be thought through. I mean, we've got to get behind the insurance industry, because without a viable insurance industry, you know, I think our economy will be a lot weaker for it. But certainly, you know, people obviously have to think about where houses are planned and located. But this is not easy. I mean, to tell somebody you've rezoned their house and it's now got no value is a very complex thing to do. But it does say to us we've got to do, you know, all the work on climate change around how we reduce our emissions, but as much work on how we adapt. How do we look after our major forests? How do we think about all of our flood areas, and how do we build resilience? So, but that's got to be done in tandem with the insurance industry, because they are going to be crucial partners in this. And I want to see government and the insurance industry working together to say, how do we obviously protect people's lives and properties, but how do we keep a viable insurance industry going?
Yeah. Rob, just on the building side, of course, Bunnings is doing a bit of a roaring trade down here, and it's very much B2B because of the building. Is that right?
Well, that's right. As you know, construction is a big part of the industry here, and Bunnings' business relies heavily on a lot of small businesses, builders, trades that account for about 30% of their business. So Bunnings cannot be successful without small business and builders being successful here. So we're doing a lot of work to try and not only offer them the products and services that they need, but helping them with the various problems that they face as they're growing their business, be it offering trade accounts, digital applications for apprentices to help them develop their careers. There's a lot more that we can do to help them, because when they're successful, we are successful.
Yes, Grant, the perennial issue in all these Strong Australia Fora with regional towns seems to be skills. What skills are you particularly looking for in this region?
We're desperately short of people in hospitality, and especially chefs and cooks for those world-class wineries and kitchens that are in constant demand, and growing tourism is fantastic. But
pretty nice to be a chef in this area, I would have thought.
It's a pretty good, yeah. A lot of guys surfing the menu around here, that's for sure. But we need to be able to offer a world-class product, and that's got to be prepared by people with the appropriate skills and training. And if we're unable to source that locally and meet that demand in the short term, we need to look at the needs of immigration.
Okay, so immigration is a very important area that you're pushing, is it?
Yeah, it certainly is. We're working with our hospitality sector and other sectors, agricultural, to make sure that we're able to meet those needs and examine the business case to be a declared area for some of those skills of need.
Yeah. Skilling up, Stephen, obviously a big issue anyway. Are companies taking it upon themselves, given how difficult it is? I mean, Jennifer's trying her best to push reform in the vet sector, but is the business taking it upon itself to directly help in the skills upskilling?
Yeah, well, certainly in our case, we've taken on new trainees and put them through a 2-year traineeship to ensure that we've got the skills that we need going forward. We've managed to train people in not only the traditional gas distribution skills, but we're also looking at, well, how do those young people adapt their skills throughout their career? We know that all industries are changing. The energy industry is going through enormous amounts of change, and we need people who can continue to learn and adapt and develop new skills as they go along. I
guess one of the issues around here would be, and perhaps you back to Grant, is the seasonality. You think of B&Bs and tourism, but you've been working very hard to take the lumpiness out of that, I suppose.
Yeah, absolutely. From where we were 10 to 15 years ago, we've managed to decrease that seasonality and make sure that there are jobs for our young people to stay in the region and work in hospitality and show a career path through that hospitality industry. and make it that it's not just a summer job, that there are certainly benefits to working in that.
So what's on offer here through the season for tourists, for example?
Yeah, so we have from our summer peak season with the beaches, of course, and the shoulder seasons where we enjoy the harvest of the vineyards, down to surfing competitions. In the springtime, we have the 35,000 whales that hop past the end of the Busselton Jetty. So at all times of the year, and we have events that are interspersed through those, cultural, musical, sporting events. The biggest film prize in Cinefest Oz here in August. So that's in the middle of winter. So we're looking at that.
And what about this idea that people, there are some jobs that people, particularly in hospitality, Australians don't seem to want to do?
Yeah, there are certainly those jobs certainly in the harvest period of viticulture and the pruning required and the picking of avocados and harvesting of potatoes. You know, there are certain seasonalities there that we need to and we can't accommodate with our local population. So we do need to be flexible in our working arrangements to meet those needs.
And that comes back to immigration, I suppose, those issues.
Yeah, that's where the area of need is, and we have a lot of backpackers that come through, and they add a lot to the vibrancy of our communities. But they're valuable resources.
Jennifer, one of the issues that's emerged and actually has gone backwards a little bit thanks to the Royal Commission is access to finance for a lot of small businesses. We've been hearing that is becoming quite difficult now. What's going to be done about that?
I think there's two things that have to be done. The first thing is to say that wherever we go in Strong Australia, the demand side for people's products and services is huge. And everyone says to us, if I could just get a little bit more capital, I could really get going. It's not like I don't have a shortage of customers. I've got lots of customers with lots of orders. So if we could do two things. First is to obviously get some kind of investment allowance going to make that investment easier. But secondly, to
You're hoping for that in the budget?
We are. But secondly, to make sure that whatever we do on the banking regulation side, we don't overreach and create a shortage of credit. Because the consequences of a shortage of credit are actually to small business. And it's small business, I think we can see, whether it's here in Busselton or around the country, that they are the lifeblood of these communities. They need the big companies working side by side with them. But if they can't get access to that capital to expand and grow, then we're basically putting an artificial constraint not only on the regions but on the country's capacity to grow.
Yes, Rob?
Oh, look, I totally agree with that, and I think the banks and regulators are becoming aware of this issue, which is fortunate because it is something that could really hamper our growth as a nation. It could hamper growth creation. We do see through our Bunnings business and our Officeworks business that a number of small businesses do struggle to get finance, particularly when their personal account is somewhat linked to their business account, and that's the way that a lot
which is very common.
Very common. So there are things that we do to try and help with various trade account support mechanisms, but I think we just need to realise that the banking system is very important for our country.
Technology, obviously, is another big issue. Now, you, on your results this week, talked about Wesfarmers' interests in technology, data, artificial AI. What would stop you, for example, looking at, say, Busselton, to open an office to help support flybys or whatever else you're doing?
Well, it's a good question. Well, a lot of our investment in communities and regional areas in particular is really channelled through our key businesses. Now, Wesfarmers prides itself on this decentralised model where we really try and empower our teams in the regions, in the businesses. So in many ways it's up to them to tell us where the opportunity is. I've been really impressed listening to some of the stories in the last couple of days of how our teams in Bunnings and Kmart in particular are engaging with local community groups, be it schools in terms of vocational training and job support and other initiatives. So who knows over time how it could evolve in the digital area.
Stephen, tech, very important part of your business too. And I suppose that goes to alternative energy and looking at the whole carbon challenge that we have.
That's right. But just back on the capital side, regulated businesses like ours are seeing record low rates of return, regulated rates of return. And what that tends to do is drive passive investment rather than the active investment which ATCO has been putting forward recently. And to your point, we've been working on low carbon alternatives to natural gas and developing green hydrogen technology, where we take excess renewable energy and water and produce hydrogen and oxygen. And the hydrogen can then be blended into the natural gas to lower the carbon intensity of the gas when it's used.
Right.
But without the support of policy, then these initiatives are harder and harder for businesses to progress.
Yes. More broadly, Grant, people have been talking about the investment in infrastructure, yes, but the idea of the investment in the experience being just as important.
Yeah, we've seen that with the struggle, not just for commercial ventures, but also looking at our attractions and being able to leverage some funding towards those. Although we really need that hard infrastructure, the airport, the roads for people to get here. When they get here, we need to make sure that our experiences, and this is true of all regional areas around Australia, that the experiences when they get here are quality experiences. Work that I do with Regional Capitals Australia, we all know that if we make our places attractive to visit, we can ease the burden on the population of Sydney, Melbourne and other major cities that are really bursting with growing pains, and we can accommodate that growth.
And as I was saying, you know, great place to come and live, spend a small or a long amount of time. Jennifer, I should just mention the grey nomads and the opportunity there.
Yeah, look, I think it's part of this broader immigration and inter-Australia immigration story. I mean, I do believe that this area needs that Dharma status to make it easier to access skilled migrants for particular jobs. But in addition to that, we need to promote to Australians, particularly people who are retiring, that you can come to a place like Busselton, you can either relocate or do what Bunnings does, you can register to say, I'm going to be in Busselton in July, I'm looking for some work, I've got these skills, and I think we've just got to get more innovative about accessing talent and saying to people who want to keep working, they want a kind of bit of retirement, but they want to keep working, hey, here's a way that you can kind of pick up some seasonal work or some casual work when you're in location X. I think it's a brilliant sort of area to tap into, but also to say to people living in the East Coast, you're probably sitting on a house worth quite a bit of money if you're in Sydney and Melbourne. Why don't you think about selling it, cash up, come and live in Busselton?
Yeah. So to sum up, Jennifer, you know, you've been to various towns for Strong Australia. How do you see the potential for Busselton, particularly with the news of the airport?
Look, I think this place is ready to really go. It'd be great to see more investment in the airport, but I think the Jetstar flights will make a huge difference. But everything that you need to really get something going is here. An industrial economy, a tourism economy, an agribusiness economy, a skills system, an amazing set of kind of lifestyle attributes. You know, we've really got to kind of put our effort as a nation in making places like Busselton go as hard as they can.
Jennifer Westacott, Mayor Grant Henley, Rob Scott, Stephen Green, thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Steve.
This program has been brought to you by the Business Council of Australia. Authorised by J. Clark, Business Council of Australia, Melbourne.